Hey man, like I was saying last night, this is such a good insight. You're right on the money, and so you're right in the sweet spot. This is the PowerPoint, the pivot point of change right here. Right when change the definition of change is thinking, feeling, acting differently today than you would have to the same stimulation yesterday. And the only way that we can actually pivot towards creating new opportunities, a better future, whatever, is to notice right at that moment, right at that pivot point. And then we choose to do something differently. And it's always going to feel uncomfortable. It's like a fulcrum. And we have these mini tests and challenges, and we have ways in which we can kind of, you know, build our muscles bit by bit, with smaller challenges, and then we grow stronger and we get bigger challenges. But awareness of the pattern is the first step, and noticing, oh, here I am right on this path where I normally go this way. I need to go this way. And it's not rocket science, but we are drawing attention to that point of change, and that point of change is actually where the power is. That is how we turn stops into steps. That is how we rise on the very ground over which we once stumbled. And what we realize is that in order to, as we were talking about, in order to progress from level to level to level to level of life, that we actually need the challenges. They're like ladders. And you actually, that's how you get to where you want to be, is by turning the stop into a step. And then and so the very problem actually becomes the opportunity when you pivot and use a tool, when you start with accepting this is what's going on, and no fame, no blame, no shame. This is what's actually happening. And this is the ground on which I can pivot towards my values. I can pivot towards my choices. I can pivot towards my freedom. And as you're going to start to learn more and more, what's the next easiest thing that I'm willing to do that's different? Anything that's different. And we'll talk more about how we just want to just get off of that neural groove and onto a different track, even if it's randomly different, even if it doesn't seem relevantly different. You just, maybe it's as simple as like just going and you're going to notice that there's probably a habitual tendency to, way you organize your posture, your breath, or your sensations in your body, or you start thinking certain things, you start acting, you start isolating. There's going to be normal habitual ways when that thermostat, when that homeostasis mechanism starts to try to get you to be who you were. There's going to be predictable, noticeable ways in which you start acting how you have acted in the past. And any one of those becomes a thing that we can notice with awareness, and then do something slightly different, even if it's, going and splashing cold water on our face in the bathroom, just to get off of that track. And if you think about tracks, and if you think about trajectories, you have you're where you are in your head. And if you keep doing exactly what you're doing, you're going to get to a certain place. You're on a track, you're on a trajectory. And if you extrapolate that out, 3 months, 6 months, a year, 5 years, 25 years onto your deathbed, it's going to end up in a certain trajectory. And oftentimes, if we don't do anything to make positive changes in our life, that's going to be worse and worse and worse and more suffering. And the gap gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. However, just a slight modification, just a slight change is a completely different trajectory. If we look at it over time, you look at the end point of one trajectory versus another that is just slightly off angle, they get wider and wider and wider apart. You get more and more and more freedom, more and more opportunity, more and more benefit, and more. And so that's what we're looking for, is just, and then you're able to make that choice in any moment. And so you can keep widening that gap. You can keep changing that trajectory more and more towards the future that you value and choose. And that might have been a lot, it might have been fast, but there you have it.